continuance of the meeting that we started last week. So this is a continuance of our June council meeting. I assume that since we're continuing, we don't need to have roll call or anything like that.
We'll do roll call. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do a roll call.
Yeah.
So, you want to do it?
Councilmember Carlson?
Here.
Councilmember Dobby?
He's excused.
Councilmember McKeithen?
She's walking in the door right now.
Vice Mayor Lewis?
Here.
Mayor Woodman?
Here. Okay, so as we start, I guess I would like to just make a quick mention of two things. One was there was a concert in the park yesterday put on by the Arts Committee. It was a terrific concert, and about 100 to 150 residents went, and it was, I think everybody had a good time. There's another one at the end of July. And hopefully more people can partake of it, but it was a good thing. Also, you may recall we started this meeting off with, I had a wardrobe change, and there's been some questions, are we really welcoming Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to, say that I welcome Facebook here with my wardrobe malfunction. I'll give it a like, okay? Facebook like, okay? So we're going to move forward then, and we are on item which? 23, which is our budget. So I assume, Deborah, you're going to take us through that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Today, this morning, your item is approval of the fiscal year 2012-2013 operating and capital improvement budget. Over the last several months, the council has had budget workshops in March and April. The city manager presented the recommended annual budget. It was introduced at the May 16th regular meeting of the city council. The Planning Commission reviewed the capital improvement program at their May 23rd meeting for general plan consistency and have issued a memo that's at the back of your packet. Overall, the general fund budget is in balance. Last year at this time, the council and the town were struggling with significant deficits over the last few years, and there were major reorganizations completed that have helped the town to reduce costs in the areas of Public Works and Building Department. Other areas like City Attorney, the costs have been reduced through different strategies that the town has embarked upon. So this budget for next year reflects those types of changes and rolls them forward to the next year, so you can see significant savings. In your staff report, the general fund overall is going to possibly be $440,000 in the red at the end of the fiscal year if we maintain our budget targets. The general fund revenues, we're projecting an increase of about 2.5% from the current year's budget. And in the area of expenditures, we're projecting almost a 5% decrease, which some of the significant areas are, as I mentioned, the City Attorney's Office, the Building Department, and the Public Works Department in the maintenance area. Since the introduction of the budget, there have been just a few slight changes to what the original recommended budget was. It increased overall expenditures in the general fund by $105,425, and that's listed on page 4 of your staff report. We added a little bit of additional cost for videotaping of public meetings to get us started in that before we get our full system implemented. We added in $100,000 in the administration budget for contingencies. We made a correction in the Comcast area and increased a little bit of the water charges because we looked at those bills and saw that there was an increase. So just overall, $105,000 change. the authorized positions from last year. Really, the only change that we have from last year's revised budget is just reflecting the budget as with a contract public works director rather than a full-time public works director. The staffing is the same as it has been. That's kind of my general fund summary. The special funds all reflect a positive fund balance at the end of the year, as well as the internal service funds. There's not much significant change in those areas. And the capital improvement program, we've had several reviews of that. We're happy to answer any questions regarding the capital improvement program, but we've shown in the staff report 1 year's worth of expenditures for 2012-13, showing that they all come up with positive fund balances at the end. And as you know, the 5-year plan is at the last attachment to the budget, and that reflects kind of a 5-year planning timeline for those projects. So overall, if the council chooses to adopt this budget, the general fund balance policy will be intact. The fund balance policy states that there is a 15% reserve of operating expenditures for emergencies. And you can see that on page 15 of your recommended budget. It shows kind of the ending fund balances where there's a budget or a building reserve, 15% emergency reserve, which is about $1.6 million. I also reserved the funding to pay off the PERS side fund obligation, which we have already wired, 1.2 to pay off the safety fund. The other $700,000 will be reserved for paying off the miscellaneous parts next year. And there's also an additional 20% reserve of almost $2.2 million. So a total of 35% in reserves, which is very generous for a town of our size. I think that's a very good reserve policy. And the adopted budget or the recommended budget allows for those to stay intact. So that concludes my report. We're happy to answer any questions for you.
Questions from the council?
Good morning. Thank you, Deborah. What is the valuation the assessor has given the town at this point, and how much has it gone up the past year?
In the area of property tax?
The valuation that they base their property tax on.
The valuation, when I spoke to the deputy assessor a month or so ago, he thought that the town of Atherton would be above the county average, which was about 2.5%.
You don't know the dollar amount that the valuation is, though, of the town?
I don't have that information yet.
Would you check that out? There's some data in the paper today of various cities that showed valuation numbers a year ago, valuation today. I'd be interested to see that. I think they're updated numbers, and be able to look at that compared to what your projections are for property tax increases.
Absolutely. And within this budget and at your next council meeting, we'll be bringing to you the contract for property tax auditing services. And that service will provide us with an immense amount of detail about the assessed value in the town.
They said 440,000 general fund in the red. Would you explain that?
No, in the black.
Well,
Yeah, you said red. You said red, but
I said red.
yeah. Yes, we were gonna
See,
get
I
to
should
that.
not be using those types of.
We don't talk about red stuff.
We don't. We are in the
I was
black.
listening.
I said the wrong thing. We are
Now,
in the
where
black.
are we with a 5-year financial plan?
I'm going to bring that to the Finance Committee to review the assumptions at our next meeting.
Okay, good. And are you getting new actuarial numbers to plug into that?
The OPEB, or the Medical Retirement Liability actuarial study, is in process right now. I was just corresponding with our actuary yesterday, and I think by the end of July they hope to have that data to us, and so they'll be able to give us the new projections for our retirement liabilities at the end of July.
You mentioned 105,000, of which some of it was for a video system before we got a full-blown system. What's the plan there? I wasn't aware that we were getting a full-blown system.
I believe the digital recorder. Maybe the city manager can help me with the digital recorder options.
We're still reviewing and analyzing our options. We ordered the iPads to go paperless, and then with that, we're going to combine a video system to allow for videotaping. Right now, we're paying the gentleman who comes here and videotapes each meeting per meeting.
I don't recall any discussion about that in terms of capital budget in any detail.
It's part of our approved goals for this budget. Technology upgrades.
Well, before we spend any money, though, I think we ought to have a discussion here as to what we're getting.
Absolutely. We are at the senior staff level, we're talking about putting together a technology plan, and that would absolutely come to you before we embark on the different steps of what
There
that
was
would be.
$70,000 put in for technology upgrades in the budget, and it was just a line item. And of course, any item that is expended would need to come to the council specifically if it's $15,000 or more per our purchasing policy. So everything will have to come here, and Teresa, as mentioned, is talking to a number of subcontractors about what they think they can do to help us. Plus, we've explored with some local companies some things that perhaps they might be able to help us with.
Does that include website update?
She had
70,000?
She had the website included in that.
I'm a little confused. The 70,000, is that on page 15 of 15, the capital improvement program, or is it someplace else? It seems like it's the same number both places. I have a question about the $70,000 budget item for the town center facilities.
Is it in non-department?
I believe it's in non-department.
Page 37 of 86.
Page 37 of 86.
On page 37, we've just kind of detailed out some of the things that we've been looking at, as the mayor mentioned, items that are of large dollar, or even just the plan that we are going to put forth, we would bring to the council for discussion. But in the PD, the server room, we need to really look at that and whether it's a secure area. Just implementing some of the internal infrastructure of our technology system, firewalls and servers and things like that, website design and hosting, wireless projects to improve security, connecting the network to the council chambers here, and just improving our transparency, document imaging, things like that we're looking at.
So the 70,000 that you're talking about is part of that $97,000, except for the 20,000 for website update. It seems like quite a lot.
I see on the same page there that you're investing in post office capability. I assume in the assumptions then that we continue on with the post office?
Since we haven't brought a plan to you, we re-budgeted for that. We re-budgeted for status quo.
Is it recording? Yes.
Is yours? Can you make sure? Okay, good.
Are you saying something?
He was concerned.
I couldn't hear, and I asked whether or not the speakers were on.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'll pass right now for other questions. Let somebody else ask.
Elizabeth, you said you had some questions?
I do. First of all, I want to say thank you very much, Deborah, and to the accounting staff for putting together such a detailed overview of the budget. We've never had such a clear and concise document, and I really wanted to thank you guys for that very much. I have a number of observations and questions, and since we did not ever have a off-site workshop on the budget, it's just been a council meeting. There's line items that I think that we should bring forward and talk about and acknowledge and question a little bit. I do want to start off by saying, if you look on page 9 of 86 of the budget, it shows that we now have only 34 employees, including the police staff, which is 18 and a half employees less than what we had back in 2004, 2005, and almost 20 less than what we had in 2007, 2008. So we've really worked hard at reducing our staff overhead, outsourcing, contracting, and I think that we're as lean and mean as we can possibly get. I don't know if there's more areas we can cut or more work that we can put on everybody else's shoulders to do, but it's something that we've had to do in these economic times. You indicated that we were going to have $400,000 in the black. I perceive the projected revenues versus the projected expenses of a $600,000 deficit, and that's on page 11 of 86.
There, between operating revenues and operating expenditures, there is a $600,000 deficit, which does not include the contribution for the parcel tax.
Right. So
then
the
once you
parcel
add in the
tax
special
transferred
parcel
in
tax,
of the 1.1 million.
Yes.
Okay.
That provides a
That
little cushion.
then increases the projected fund balance to about $400,000.
Correct.
Okay. So the need for our parcel tax is still very critical.
It's very absolute.
Okay. In the road impact fee capital project funds line item, it shows projected revenues of $3,600. Is that just interest?
Correct. That's just interest.
And the capital improvements of $70,000 for the 401 fund, that would be taken from parcel tax, and that's what is earmarked for improvements to the existing town building.
Correct. The study that we've spoken about to really review the situation with the current town facilities and put together an interim plan before a new town hall is built.
Mm-hmm. So how it seems like it's duct tape and baling wire kind of repairs. Is that right? $70,000 seems like a lot of money. Are we going to do a new roof or a new air conditioning system or new carpet, new paint, new furniture? What is the plan there?
Some of the expenses that we're anticipating is, for instance, there's a modular building at the back of the permit center that really is in need of replacement because that is virtually being held together by duct tape now. And then also, depending upon the estimate on and the progress of the town center, we may or may not be making recommendations with regard to some carpeting, because some of the carpeting in some of the offices are getting worn and we're concerned about creating some tripping hazards. Mm-hmm. So those are the types of improvements. When we budgeted $70,000 as part of your capital improvement program, it was really just a fund. I mean, that was just kind of an estimate. We really don't know what it's going to cost and what our recommendations will be. But as Mayor Widmer says, is that what we're proposing as part of the capital improvement program is to set aside $70,000 for this work. And then as we identify specific recommendations, then we will be bringing those back to council with requests for any expenditures.
I just hate to put money into a bad project, and it clearly shows the need for us to put together a new town center plan and do it as quickly as possible, so we're not continuing to pour money into a deteriorating situation. And we want to be able to go out to the public to get private donations and private funding to build our new police station and our new town center, to house our administrative offices, building department, planning, things like that. So it's painful for me to approve a $70,000 fund to replace potentially a temporary building and do some other improvements to a decaying situation. So I just don't want us to continue to do that. Looking at building revenue and building expenses, it looks like the building department, because of the outsourcing, shows a excess revenue of about $112,000. Am I understanding that?
Yes, and that's a conservative projection because just over the last few months we've seen a big increase in the development community here. So I believe that those are conservative estimates on revenue, and it's possible there will be more activity than what we're expecting.
Okay. So that would increase our building department reserves to $350,000 or so. So that's in line with building department reserves. I think that's good news. That's very good news. Looking at the park revenue over the past years, if you look at the weddings revenue fees, in 2008, 2009, it showed $102,000 in revenue, and then $95,000 in revenue, and $90,000 in revenue in 2010-11, and the actual in 2011-2012 was only $20,000, and the recommended projection is 0. And it just pains me to see that we are missing this opportunity of being able to have revenue coming out of the park. I know that we've made some changes to the overhead structure, and there's a possibility to reduce costs of having that service. It just seems like we're missing an opportunity there, and I hope that council will revisit that at some point.
What all we have? Do we have any revenue in there for the other activities that we showed up? Because
Yes, there are still.
We reopened up the pavilion for all but wedding items, right?
The council directed staff to put together a policy of what types of events were applicable and
10,000
authorized, and it's a total of $76,000 is budgeted for social fees, meeting fees, and miscellaneous use fees.
There's a total, but it says $10,000 for class fees, nothing for weddings.
Correct.
And nothing for donations or contributions.
On the other page, on page 14, the very bottom, it does show the other few items that are considered part of the park program revenue, which includes social fees, meetings, and use fees.
Okay. I'll let someone else make a comment, and then I'll come back to something.
I'd like to make a comment. Does anybody want anything to eat? Because you're welcome to have it. You know, the town pays for it. It's free. So if you'd like something to eat, let us know. Okay.
But when you come up, you have a seat.
That's right. There's empty chairs here.
And you take one of our seats, and I get the first in.
Okay. Comments on the budget?
No, I've asked all my questions.
Okay, I got a couple comments on the documentation. On the Exhibit A with regards to the rules, essentially, of how the town council, it's kind of the overview. We resolve the following, blah, blah, blah. Okay? The fifth budget down there, I think that the council has been pretty clear, and I know that Council Member Dobby, who's not here, has spoken up several times and has been echoed by several other council members. That, of course, the budget is our best guess, which is why we're putting things in, anticipating what's going to happen. Like the $70,000, we may need to replace things because walls are falling through, or you can put your hand through the back wall of, say, the building department's location, or we have those unexpected expenses, such as we had last year with the air conditioning in the police department. So we do need to have things in the capital budget that are anticipatory and are essentially reserves, because if we don't have those and these things come up, then we have to suddenly go over budget, and then we're wringing our hands. But we've made it clear, I guess, with regards to that fifth budget on the capital improvement plan. We've agreed, and staff has done a terrific job of doing a projection of what our capital projects should be. And they run out 5 years. But we've said that we would revisit this every year. and it would essentially be represented every year, retrended every year. But when you read these words that are here, it's kind of like the previous one of the previous items that we discussed on the agenda, that it's going to be very difficult to go back and change these things. So I'd like to see the words changed a little bit to say something on that staff will reforecast this on an annual basis for as part of the budget approval process, which makes it a little bit, puts the council a little bit more in control of it, as opposed to we have to take some action to actually change something that's there. So the wording maybe could be improved a little bit.
If I could just read it and maybe explain the purpose of this comment. Capital project commitments. Okay, so capital project commitments, which kind of means something that's been encumbered or a contract that you've approved, is really what it's speaking to. Capital projects for which funds are appropriated in the budget year shall have those funds restricted for the use of that project. Such appropriations will continue to be valid and in subsequent fiscal years until the project is completed or the council takes subsequent action to deappropriate all or part of the funds originally restricted. So it's really speaking to the fact that today you're approving a project that's going to cross over into next fiscal year. I'm not going to come back to you on July 1st and say, can you give me money for this project?
I agree with that. Okay,
it carries over. So it's really speaking to things that you've kind of already taken action on. Okay. And it does state there that the council can always deappropriate or make changes going forward. If the city is entered into a contract, of course the council has, whatever legal rights they are to change a contract, but it still is up to the council to make those big decisions.
Okay, well then maybe some improvement on the bullet above, which talks about the capital improvement plan, might be appropriate. But okay, I appreciate
I'm happy to look at that with you.
Okay, I appreciate your explanation on bullet 5. I'd like to bring up two other things. We asked a couple months ago, can we understand really what our contract is with Alan Margot? Of course, everybody spoke eloquently about him at the beginning of this meeting, and I noticed when I was at the park for the concert last night, there's a big thing. He's taking reservations now for his tennis camp. So exactly how much money do we get out of that?
I believe the previous interim city manager, John Danielson, did review the different park program and recreation contracts. He specifically reviewed the one with the tennis pro, and the city entered into a new contract with him, which Alan is in full compliance with. It requires an annual payment based on a structure that's set up of scheduled classes. So it almost doesn't even matter if he fulfills all of those things. The things that he's programmed, he's paying for in advance.
But I don't recall seeing that contract run through here. Was it presented to the council?
No, it wasn't.
Was there a reason for that?
It didn't require council approval. It was an amendment to an existing agreement that the city already had.
Oh, we bring a lot of other contracts to the council.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do some review on that contract and hopefully make some changes to it.
Okay, I think really, if you go to his website, alanmargot-tennis.com, which is prominently displayed, and he's puts all sorts of advertisements up on our tennis courts, and that we don't get any revenue off of that. I think that's inappropriate, and we need to really get a piece of the action. If he's having a camp and he's bringing people in that don't have keys to take tennis lessons, we ought to get a piece of the facilities use fee. So I'd like to discuss that, perhaps at a future meeting where we can go over that. Yes. So I don't want to adjust the budget at this point in time on the tennis, but point out merely that for 30 people that have keys, or 27 people that have keys, some of which are Menlo Park residents, the whole town is subsidizing, all the taxpayers in the town are subsidizing those 30 people. And I think that we need to bring that to, like we've said we would do with the building department, some sort of arrangement so that it's a zero impact to the town. We don't have to make money on it, but we shouldn't be losing money on it. So then moving on, I guess I'd like to just touch base very quickly on the $150,000 of the street lamps that's in there. It seems to me that when we first discussed it, it was a discussion that we were going to save money based on a return on investment with regards to power savings, which that was good. Then it became more of a safety issue, and then it came with my, I did some investigation on my own, and I have certified, I guess, the position that the town has is that the real reason is the sparing is becoming more and more of a problem. So the series lights, I guess, are all being phased out, and it's getting harder and harder to get sparing. So I'm okay with that, but many of these street lights actually, are actually embedded into cement, so there's not a safety issue with residents digging around, because you can just walk down to Lloyton Park and see them. But it would be appropriate when we do this if we actually take a look at different types of technology. Not just, I think we've mentioned LED, but there's other types of technology that many towns are moving into. And so when you look at doing the expenditure on this, if staff could actually present some detail on what technology we're going to go to and why, and make sure it has a proper return on investment.
Yes.
Okay? And I have no other comments. We'll take public comments. Oh, Jerry, sorry, I'm sorry.
Just three quick questions here. Building department, are you still adding to the building department's building reserve fund?
Yes, we are.
And what will that be at the end of the year then?
Let's see, on page
343.
on page 31 of your recommended budget, there's a little summary of the changes to the building reserve. At the end of this year, today, we're projecting that it's $636,000, and we're really not showing much of a change. It's actually decreasing a little bit based on the budgeted revenue. It's decreasing by $10,000. However, I do believe that our revenue is going to be greater than what this budget says, so it should increase the building reserve based on the bottom line at the end of the year.
So can I just interject here, Jerry? It looks like it shows on this model that the building department lost $10,000 in this past budget year, and that's in contrast to losing about $500,000 last year. So the outsourcing, the model of outsourcing and using the contract workers is really working, and as finance director says, it looks like we're even going to be adding revenue to the reserves.
My second question is, what's the plan for managing park events?
We're still working on that plan.
When will you have that plan?
Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We put together a pretty solid plan, but there's still a few quirks that need to be worked out.
So by the next council meeting, we'll see the plan?
Yeah, I can bring that to you.
The revenue for the school and the park, is that still going to the general fund?
For the preschool?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why doesn't that offset park expenses?
The park expenses are also part of the general fund. So it's just a division.
But presentation-wise, it doesn't appear as an offset against park expenses like other items.
I agree. It is not recorded as a park program revenue. It's recorded as a general revenue in the general fund, as a general lease.
So there's an inconsistency here in terms of how we're handling park revenue. Okay, that's it.
Okay.
So my other comment has to do with our capital improvement allocation, having to do with the library. We've got in our capital improvement allocation program in the budget $900,000 for fiscal year 12-13, and then another $5,500,000 in year 13-14. And I think that in light of the potential new developments with having to do with library building and project, this should be taken out and not part of our capital improvement program budget.
I don't agree with that. I think that we have to anticipate we're moving forward, and that we need to leave those as is. Of course, if we don't spend the money, then we'll move it to the next year when we do the budgeting. Any other comments from the council before we take public comments? Any public comments on the budget? Step up, please.
You'll be surprised about me talking about tennis, but
You're only one person.
yeah, I know. I guess weekdays are tough for my team. First off, you've heard about Alan and his work, et cetera. And if you look at the report that Teresa put together, there's $8,000 of income and $6,050 of expenses for the court. And the expenses include cleaning, nets, wind screens, and repairs. So on a regular basis, I don't think the tennis courts, they do break even. The problem is the surfacing, which was brought up at the last meeting. And so if you really had these numbers were perfect, and Alan's contribution, I think, is around $3,500 a year from the activities that he does. I haven't seen the contract, so I don't know exactly how it's done. That leaves you with $1,950 a year for resurfacing, which means you could resurface a court every 24 years. So obviously that's the problem, because they probably typically last 5 to 6, more in that range. And so that's the gap we would have to cover, which I said at the last council meeting that I would be delighted to get involved in fundraising with Alan to supplement any money that the town might have to resurface the courts. So on a regular basis, and given they haven't been resurfaced, to my knowledge, for the last 11 or 12 years, it does not take budget from other things in the town, from the report and from what I know about the tennis courts. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thanks.
The big thing, as you pointed out, is the capital improvement.
It's the capital improvements, and I just think we have a way of doing it. I think there's ways of getting that done, and I think we ought to do it, because I think the tennis courts can be better. The keys, 30 keys. I did it my own unscientific look at how many people play there. It's something like 60 to 70 people. And I think the issue is, if you get one key, you can get one court. But then who says you can't get 2 courts? So there's people bringing guests in that don't have keys. I know there are foursomes who are buying 1 key and splitting the cost, okay, which I've given my own foursome a hard time about that and made everybody buy keys. Made me quite popular. But I think if you play in the court, you ought to buy a key. I mean, I think it's that simple. Now, how you police that and get that up to 60 keys, which would help, I'm not sure how you go about doing that. But there's a lot of people playing there. Last week, I even saw someone climb over the fence to get in, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But at any rate, this surfacing thing, Alan and I are willing to lead a thing to get this going, so it doesn't put a burden on anything that we might have for it in the town budget. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Rosser, would you just say your name for the record, please?
Bob Roser, 23 Wilburn Avenue.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So if Bob is going to work on this, Teresa, would they be coordinating them with the Parks Committee?
Yes.
Okay, as well as your office?
Yes.
So that'd be good. Thank you very much. I know, and you made that offer last time, and so I appreciate you reiterating it.
You might want to look into another system and the cost of maybe like a card system, so that each person, like a hotel card key system. So you issue a card, the person can only go, that person, and you can't hand the card out to another person, and it registers. And
Right. The other day when I was there taking a tour, and I looked at the the surfaces of the courts, and actually three are definitely in need. But the way I got in is somebody had disabled the doors, and the doors were wide open, so you didn't need a key at all. So I shut it when I left. But they had, I guess, I had an automatic closer, and somebody had undone it.
One court's got a semi-grass court.
Yeah, I noticed that.
A little overgrown.
Okay.
We are moving forward with resurfacing of courts 2, 3, and 4. That should be
I think
completed
those are
by
the three, yeah.
mid-August.
Okay. Come back to the council. Any other comments on the budget?
I move we approve the budget as amended.
All
second.
set? Okay. Jerry seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on. Item number 24 is item for establishing our procedures for governing the committees and commissions. Teresa?
So you have my written report. The new resolution is a result of our May 5th council workshop where we redefined our rules. You should all have the tracked version, which includes all the edits that each of you have given me over the last month. So I'll take any comments or questions.
Thank you for giving us the tracked version because it was not in the original council packet that way.
Right.
So I have questions.
Questions?
May I start?
Yeah, sure.
In the first page, the track version deletes a sentence, and then it continues, as an alternative, the city manager shall have sole discretion. So I believe that as an alternative is a misplaced phrase in light of the deleted sentence right before. So we could delete that. Try not to say On page 2, item number 3, staff and committees, there may be a need for agenda items which will, I believe that word should be may arise out of a committee meeting discussion, or might arise, or could arise. I don't know. That's just for consideration. On page 3, section 3, it talks about members serving at the pleasure of the city council. Does this mean that council has the right to replace members at any time?
Where are you at?
Page 3 of 8, section 3, third sentence. Members shall serve at the pleasure of the city council or until expiration of their term set below.
It's been in there all the time.
Yeah.
Do you want to remove members shall serve at the pleasure of city council?
Well, I don't know. I mean, is there a vehicle for us removing them?
Yeah, if they don't show up for 2 consecutive meetings, you have the option to
Mhm.
remove them.
Then, okay, so that should stay there. It also talks about each committee which cannot fill at least 50% of its seats shall be postponed until the town can recruit at least a quorum of 50% plus 1. So some of the committees have designated a large number of members, and they have never been able to fill them. Should we not review those individual committees and revise those?
We can.
And that's what we discussed during the Saturday workshop.
Yes.
That I was not able to attend.
Right.
When we have the meeting where you guys are going to interview all the applicants, we can visit that at that time.
Can I also request that during the interview process, we make it a more informal and more friendly approach?
Absolutely.
And not an interrogation. These are residents. These are volunteers. We don't want to grill them. We want to embrace their desire to serve on volunteer committees. So I think that's really an important thing we should do. Go ahead.
The Rail Committee powers and duties don't reflect the what was recommended at a special meeting, and I think adopted it, or there was at least a consensus. There were 4 items, I think. There were only 2 posted here.
As far as there's an exhibit attached to the resolution as well. It would be on the last page.
We've got Exhibit A.
Yes. I'm sorry.
There's 4 of them here.
I guess I don't understand why it's Exhibit A rather than a substitute for A and B in under 6.
Is that what you wanted, to substitute? I can do that.
Well, that was the idea,
Okay.
was that these would replace what was under A
I
and
can do
B.
that.
The other comment I have about some of the terms of the committees, we've got them being 4-year terms. And it seems to me, my experience has been in trying to recruit members of the town to serve on committees, making a 4-year commitment is a big deal. Is there an alternative time frame that the council can feel good about, a shorter time frame? It just seems that getting an individual to commit to serving on a committee for 4 full years is quite hard. Any discussion on that?
Well, I think on some of the committees, it probably is appropriate if somebody had a commitment issue to change people out. I think on other committees, there is some longevity that's required. I think the Finance Committee, there's longevity that's required. You know, we're doing the same thing every year, and it would bog down the committee if you continually had new people every year. However, and which is the same idea we had when we took the term limits out of several of the other committees. The Rail Committee has got specific expertise. The terms will never expire. And so we made that change. We made the change. You know, of course, Newtown Center and the Library Committee, there's no term limits there. So if somebody wanted to apply and said, I'm willing to apply, but only for 2 years, I think that it's on a case-by-case basis. That would be my opinion. I don't know how other people feel, but
Could we put that into the definition and as a
the council could
policy?
consider that. I think that's a good idea.
Do that?
It's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Those are my comments.
Okay, Kathy.
On page 2 of 8, third line, time frame has to be separated.
I didn't hear her.
That she wants one of the lines. She said time frame, and she wanted it 2 words.
And on page 3 of 8, chairperson and staff shall select its chair. Section 4, the sentence beginning, no committee member shall use his or her own personal credit card. And under the Arts Committee, it says thereafter each term of office shall be 4 years. The term of office shall be 5 members appointed to a 4-year term, and the remaining 5 members shall be 3-year terms. Thereafter each term of office shall be 4 years. How does that work given our present Arts Committee?
The staggering of terms?
Yes.
The reason I like to put together staggering of terms,
Yes, it's the way they have it right now. Look at the committee right now.
they have about 8 people.
Are any of the terms staggered right now?
Yes.
How many do they
I don't have the roster in front of me, but they are staggered. They always have been staggered.
So they still do have some staggered terms?
Yes, yeah. And that's so not everybody's up for reappointment at the same time.
And we need to take action on next page, page 5 of 8, committee meets on an as-needed basis. This is the Finance Committee and the council chambers. Pursuant to council action, it says on June 20th, and of course that's not accurate. The committee shall establish a regular schedule of meetings. Does that mean that today we need to establish a regular schedule of meetings?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so that needs to be deleted. The Library Steering Committee is one of the committees that doesn't show a regular meeting time and where it meets. We do have a regular meeting time and where it meets, unless a special meeting is called by the chair.
I didn't make any changes to that. That was just carried over from the last resolution, so I'll just remove it.
The next page, page 7 of 8. This declaration is made with specific recognition of the provisions of 2 California Code of Regulations, section 18707.4. What is that?
Jerry, no chance you are aware of what that is.
What's this?
Well, she's talking about this, this declaration is made specific.
This was all carried over when you guys created the.
I would recommend that instead of referring to the California Code, we
This
state
has to
what
do
it
with the
is,
rail.
because no one's going to know what that is. And this refers to Exhibit A, which is attached, but it's also attached as Exhibit B, and it's not referenced anywhere in this document.
Right, and Exhibit A is going to be removed because that's going to be added to.
And under number 8, the word city needs to be taken out in the.
I've never seen it before. How'd that get in there?
And that's it.
I've got a comment on Exhibit A for the Rail Committee. Item D, it says Rail Committee members are authorized to act as spokesmen to articulate and advocate the town's rail-related policy positions as they pertain to Rail Committee matters to legislature, HSR, and Caltrain Board of Directors, regional organizations, press, and other interested parties. And I think that we are. They're drafting a number of documents. They're presenting documents on our behalf, but those documents come through the council. And so I would say as approved by the town council at the end. So they are permitted to, for example, William Grinley. He does a great job of speaking on behalf of not just our town, but all towns. But I think that I wouldn't want to see rail committee people going out and speaking to press, et cetera, making proclamations representing the town. They're not representing the town. And so they're representing themselves. They're being subject matter experts. But if they're going to speak on behalf of the town, and this is talking about their responsibilities as part of committee members representing the town, then those proclamations need to get council approval.
Mayor, what it refers to is that over time there have been a number of memos that you've signed and been written that basically describe the town's posture, or if you want to call it policies, on various matters. And to the extent that those documents have been made public through your signature or through the council's approval of things, it becomes a body of information or decisions, or what do you want to call it, that I think the rail committee members can speak from. They're not developing new ideas and on their own kind of a thing, but it has to go through a process. I agree, and that's what the intent here is, that over time. I did have a whole list of things which I asked to have taken out because I thought it got just too bulky, but that's the intent here.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for the explanation.
Mayor, can I go back on
Sure.
something? This council had asked me to look into environmental programs in other communities, and I did. And by far and away, the best environmental program that I found was one that, it was a mix. There was one in Woodside that had a very good enumeration of its duties, and it said the duties: the committee advises and assists the council, planning commission, and staff on conservation, open space, noise, public services, and facilities as pertaining to the elements of the town's general plan. The committee may advise the town council if requested on matters pertaining to noise, water, tree preservation, surface runoff, energy conservation, and resource recovery, recycling, and solid waste removal. The committee develops and recommends educational programs which will create public awareness of environmental issues and conditions, and recommends regulations and action programs which foster conservation principles. And it talked about when they meet and what their conservation was. Portola Valley also talked about what its programs were and how many members and when they met and what their minutes were. But far and away, Hillsborough had an incredible incredible website. And I know I've spoken with Teresa about that. They talked about the greenhouse effect. They talked about their gas inventory report, their building program. They went into their solar program and their demolition debris and recycling with pictures, and also various subcategory, how you comply, the Greenpoint rated program, their green building ordinance, and how you could learn more, all these different subtopics. But in addition, they had page after page of just common issues that people throughout the town, you know, Acterra was a wonderful program, but it was a program that cost the town almost tit for tat what it earned in savings for the highest energy users in that year in the town. So although it benefited other towns because it was a wonderful program that was developed, it didn't actually benefit the average resident of Atherton. Whereas what this does is it talks about battery and electronics recycling, how you do it, how you drop off prescription medications, document shredding and recycling and what you do with it, water conservation and various tips for gardening and conservation and how you can be water wise and energy wise, and what you do with light bulbs and energy savings, and the various steps you can take in your home, and what devices you can use, and how electronically what you can use, and multifunction devices, and shower heads, and flue dampers, and washers, and laundry, and dryers, and lint traps, and air leaks, and insulation, and furnaces, and programmable thermostats, and then it goes to other links in green towns and Flex Your Power and checkups for energy audits that you can get for free, and certified audits, and Emerson Environmental and various search tools that can be used, and also various other things that the town is doing that connects those resources in the town with these programs. It's a wonderful site that has not only some of the esoteric, as some people might refer to them, energy programs that are very valuable, but also some of the more mundane things that are equally valuable for the average citizen in town, with, again, various sort of like the roots of a tree, various subcategories that one can pursue to do more for the environment. And one of the other things I'd like to suggest is, at some point, given what's happened with this committee, I would recommend that we need a staff member, not to just oversee the committee, but actually take charge and become integrated with the committee, who is involved in pursuing these activities, as well as an IT person who can activate this kind of website.
So your recommendation,
We
the
need
comments
to spend
are
some
that
money.
Okay, sorry. So I think an easy thing on the Hillsborough website, if staff feels that that's a great website, we should probably contact them and see if we could have links to theirs and and if they would give us permission to have an overview chart that would say Atherton.
Yes.
And normally that's okay. People normally agree with that. And then they could maintain it, and we would just link into theirs. So, but with your regards to Portola Valley, Woodside, etc., are you suggesting we change the write-up on what our committee is, or what you're just pointing out?
I was suggesting that as we look at what our committee may want to evolve into, based upon what Hillsborough has done, we may want to expand some of its duties and perhaps limit some of the others. But I think that first and foremost, we need to contact Hillsborough. We need to see how it is they set it up. We need to determine what our resources are to develop a staff member to become involved in this, and working with that staff person, perhaps revise what our environmental committee's powers and duties are, with keeping in sight what these other communities have determined.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
rather than doing this on the fly, wouldn't it make sense to ask the committee to take this up and come back with a proposal?
Yeah, I think that when the committee is appointed, they should look at these other towns as Councilmember Carlson has said, and possibly even go up and meet with the Hillsborough people and then come back with a plan. I think that's an excellent idea. Would you be okay with that?
That's fine
Okay.
if there is a committee.
Yeah. So,
And there are only 2 people that applied, as last I saw.
Right. So, any other council comments before we take public comment on the governance and establishment of committees and commissions? Seeing none, we'll go to public comments. Are there any public comments with regards to this item? Don't all rush. Seeing none, we will close it. Can we have a motion on this, or do we need further discussion on this item with the edits that were communicated?
I move adoption with the changes that we indicated.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Moving on. Thank you very much. Item number 25 is the request to provide staff some direction with regards to some design feasibility services for a potential roundabout at Alameda de la Pulgas and Atherton Avenue. Teresa or Mike,
Go ahead,
are you
Mike.
going to?
Yes, Mayor Whitmer, members of the City Council. This item came from the May 8th Town Transportation Committee, where they requested that staff put together a request for proposal to hire an engineering consultant to take a look at the feasibility and cost to install a roundabout at Atherton and Alameda. Roundabouts are traffic control devices that is a good alternative to a traffic signal. At this location, it's currently a 4-way stop, and due to the increasing traffic volumes, the delay has continually increased. In fact, in the afternoon, the backup sometime on Alameda goes all the way back to Camino Al Lago at Las Lobitas School. So staff does believe that it would be good to take a look at the feasibility, and we do believe that a roundabout is a good alternative to explore at this location. Because this requires expenditure funds, that's why we brought it here to council to get your direction and approval of the expenditure funds. If the anticipated cost of the engineering consultant is in the $15,000 to $25,000 range, how this would be funded is as part of the budget, as part of your capital improvement program. There is a program in there called traffic safety, and within that program, there's $50,000 for this year. So, 50, yes, and so that would be staff's suggestion on how this is funded once we got to the point of bringing back a recommended consultant.
Thank you, Mike. Comments from the council? Jerry?
So the problem they're trying to solve here is you say increasing backup. Looking at all the intersections and looking throughout the town and so forth, is this the number one priority that to be looked at?
To be honest, I don't know that it's a number one priority. There isn't any type of traffic volume, this kind of information throughout the town. How this came up was a resident in the area actually brought this to the Transportation Committee, and the Transportation Committee agreed that it would be good to study this intersection. But I do believe that, although I don't have facts and figures on which is the worst, I mean when you take a look at just the volume on Alameda, and that is a 4-way stopped intersection. I'm trying to think of other areas in town that might be similar. And of course, you have a lot of backup along Middlefield, but those are all traffic controlled intersections. So offhand, I can't think of any other intersection that would be similar to Alameda and Atherton.
Yeah.
So to what extent have you actually performed traffic study analysis on this intersection to verify the backup has been getting worse over time?
We haven't done any studies, just some observations and hearing from residents, and also talking to the Las Lobitas School.
So It's my understanding, and I have friends in that area, that it just wasn't one resident that brought this. I mean, one resident brought it to the Transportation Committee, but there had been lots of neighborhood meetings and discussions and support from the neighbors in and around Atherton Avenue, off of Polhemus, in the Orchard Hills area, in that general neighborhood, just saying that this is getting worse and worse and worse all the time, and we need to do something about it. And it takes residents sometimes a long time to be able to figure out how to present and bring the problem to the town. And I was approached by the residents, and I said, well, what you have to do is contact the Public Works Director and then go before the Transportation Committee. And so I think that's what they did over the last few months. So I mean, the potential budget to maybe do a roundabout that you've put in your staff report of $300,000 is enormous. That's an enormous cost. Could that, if you go forward with that, could that potentially be contributed by Menlo Park? I mean, aren't we kind of congesting Menlo Park's right away up on Alameda, back by Las Lomitas, an area?
We can certainly ask for contributions. I can anticipate the response. I mean, it's no different than, Menlo Park or Redwood City or San Mateo County asking Atherton to contribute to traffic improvements in their town as well. So I think as a general rule, unless it's caused by new development, pretty much cities are responsible for alleviating their own traffic issues.
Right. So you talk about potential fund sources for the study being the gas tax, Measure A, Measure M. Is that part of the $50,000 traffic study fund, or would that be over and above that?
No, actually, the traffic safety program that's part of the CIP is funded through the parcel tax.
Okay. So any other Measure A or Measure M would be in addition to that?
Yes. I mean, what we're saying is that we would use the traffic safety dollars in the traffic safety program to fund the study. And once the study identifies, for instance, if the study says, yes, it is feasible and it costs X amount of dollars, then at that point we would bring that information back to the council to see if the council wants to move forward. And if that's the case, then what we would do is include it probably as part of next year's capital improvement program and figure out, how it could be funded, whatever that amount is.
As a member of the Transportation Committee now for a long time, this is an issue that has not just been a year in the making, it's been years. And it's been brought to the Transportation Committee for years. Duncan studied the issue, and that's been part of the problem, not Duncan, but the fact that we've received all kinds of varying responses with regard to the issue. Originally, we were told it could cost millions to construct it. And one of our committee members has a son or son-in-law who does these kinds of things and said it could cost millions. There are different kinds of roundabouts is the problem. And Duncan gave a quick look at it and measurement and indicated, yes, a roundabout. Now, a roundabout, what kind, we don't know, but a roundabout could be put in there. But he, as well, indicated it could cost close to $1 million. So we've gone anywhere from multi-millions to close to $1 million to $300,000. And we don't know how much it would cost. We don't know exactly if it would fit within that area, although we surmise it would. But more and more people have actively indicated that that intersection is a problem. And given the fact that in this country, we are waking up to the fact that roundabouts are the way to go from alleviating traffic congestion and saving gas standpoint, and traffic safety. They are a traffic safety measure rather than having four-way intersections. This from the Transportation Committee's perspective, seemed to be the time to finally say, let's find out precisely what the answers to these questions are, rather than looking at this question in the dark and looking at it conjecturally. Let's find out some answers. People's lives, safety, time, and the environment are all impacted by the answer to this question. So let's get the answers.
Having lived in Europe for a number of years, I'm very familiar with roundabouts and mini roundabouts, and I agree that they keep the traffic flowing as opposed to causing stops. However, roundabouts actually would require lots of space, and we would have to acquire property. Mini roundabouts, I'm not sure that would solve the problem. Also, the yields through there could cause the adjoining streets, Atherton Avenue on both sides, from that traffic from being able to effectively get out. And a traffic signal might be a more cost-effective approach, as well as with current technologies and cost. That might be something that you would consider, but I just don't think that you talk about potential sources. Would be the gas tax, Measure A, et cetera, and I understand that you would consider that for next year's budget. But as of right now, I think our capital improvement plan does include the expenditures of the gas tax, the Measure A's, and things like that. So when we approve a budget as we're moving forward, we're going to bring in big ticket items, then we're going to have to take some big ticket items out or postpone. And as others have brought up, I'm not so sure that that's the worst intersection in town, and whether or not, based on conversations we've had recently with regards to Marsh Road and Middlefield, the comments from a number of residents, as well as people up here on the Diaz, has been, we don't want Atherton to be a major thoroughfare for people. That if our streets are a bottleneck, so maybe people will find a different way to transverse. We don't want to be the highway for people to get from point A to point B. So I understand that from a traffic flow standpoint, for people that are actually using that, they would want it to go very quickly, same as people come down Marsh Road. But people don't want to widen it. They don't want to do anything else there. So I'm not 100% in favor of I guess the proposal from my perspective, but that's based on where we are. But I'd like to hear from the public. You probably live there. Are you the A resident?
No, that area doesn't affect me very much, Bob Roser. My concern is bringing a solution before we've analyzed the problem. Mm-hmm. And if you have a roundabout and you back up because you've pushed the traffic faster to the next bottleneck, a roundabout is a real problem when they back up. It sounds like there's a number of options, and I think the analysis should be what happens to the flow of traffic on down, given that the roundabout solves the problem at Atherton, and then what are the costs of mitigating that. I'd be very concerned in putting that in there, have it back up to the roundabout, and you've spent a lot of money, and you've got a real problem then when it backs up to the roundabout. Thank you.
I have just one quick question.
Sure. So we come back. Any other public comments? All right. Come back to the council.
Just to Mike, so the study, the proposed study, estimated cost of $17,000 to $27,500. Would that also include other options? I mean, or will it just be a study specifically for a roundabout installation, or would they look at other potential mitigation measures?
Well, as part of that, we would ask them to compare the cost of first of all, to determine if a roundabout is in fact feasible. Given, because we do want to make sure that the existing right-of-way would accommodate it, and roundabouts is very important that it's properly designed, and so we want to make sure that it's feasible. If the answer is yes, and then they're going to provide a cost, then we'll want them also to compare that cost with a more conventional traffic signal. So that, and really from a regulating traffic standpoint, really you're only looking at two different things. It's really a signal or a roundabout. With regards to this gentleman's comment about backups, the things that where cars back up is where you have a signalized intersection or stop signs. And so in this case, the nearest traffic control like that on the kind of going towards, I'm not sure if that's north, but it's at Woodside Road. There's a traffic signal, and going back the other way, I can't recall where the next. Yes, at Valparaiso there's a signal. So really, those are the only two areas where right now there would be any stoppage of vehicles.
And that's a long way away.
It is a long way. It is a long way.
Pretty long. Okay.
I guess, Mike, I'm still wrestling in my mind here in terms of the process that we use to go about allocating our scarce funds for capital projects. And I understand the Transportation Committee has wrestled with this problem for quite a while, and it's natural that they would bring it up and want to have something looked into on it. But from your perspective as being responsible for all public works projects in town, how would you characterize this particular project, A, being most critical, B, less so, C, other projects that we get to if we had the funds? Where would this particular project fit in that kind of a categorization?
Well, as far as projects that we know there's known problems that are an issue, those are already or have been part of your capital improvement program. And as when you think about traffic and intersections, just kind of thinking about how kind of things progress. In a very where there's hardly any traffic at all, you can have a four-way intersection and it's uncontrolled, meaning that there's no stop signs. Then as traffic begins to grow, then typically what happens is one of those streets become more of the primary streets as far as volume, and then what you do to, because you get concerned about traffic safety issues, then the next progression you do is you put a stop sign at what's called the minor leg. And then as traffic continues to grow, then you stop all four legs. And then as traffic continues to grow, then really the way to address it is through a traffic signal or some other regulatory device. And a roundabout is another one of those devices. So, from my standpoint, I do believe that now it's time, because of the delays and backup that's occurring on Alameda, I do believe it's time to take a look at the feasibility of, a traffic control device. And, given that location, just given the town, roundabouts are much softer. In my opinion, they're much more appropriate where you have where you don't want to create an urban environment or a look of an urban environment. The roundabouts provide a very good alternative.
So if the committee had posed the question or problem a little differently and said, Mike, take a look at this intersection, there's a backup here, and come to us with a recommendation as to what, maybe an order of priority as to what might be solutions or ways to tackle it, you'd start out with roundabout then? Is that what you're saying?
Given the level of that traffic, yes, I would be taking a look at a roundabout as the first alternative, but also costing out a traffic signal. We do know that a traffic signal will fit. You can easily signalize that intersection within that existing right-of-way. Typically, signals are a little more expensive from a capital standpoint, from an initial capital standpoint. But again, just given the look and feel of the town, my recommendation would be to take a look at a roundabout.
I'm with Jerry on the cost of even doing the study. I'm not sure that that's the most important project that we need to do right now. There are other things that, when we went through the capital plan and we went through the goals, there are a lot of things that were listed there that didn't get any funding, and we could possibly, if we're going to break this funding free for this, I mean, this is, you said you got $50,000 for anything that comes from the Transportation Committee. They come forward with stuff all the time. You know, every time they have a meeting, they have a recommendation coming forward. In fact, the next item is another recommendation. So I wouldn't want to spend 50% just as we're getting started. So for me, I think that the expense of even looking into this at this point in time is very, very high. And I understand that there is a problem, but there's a problem at a lot of our streets that we've talked about in other meetings. And so the problem has been there for a while. My recommendation is we kick the can down the road. And maybe perhaps consider that as something in the budget for next year. But unfortunately, that's 12 months away.
So, can I
Yeah, sure.
make a... So, Mike, would there be... what would be your estimation if we did a town-wide? I think what's kind of coming up here is we've got the roundabout in item 25. We've got the humps in item 26, and each of them are, a study of their own. Is there an estimation of how much it would cost to do like a town-wide study? I know that we've got in the budget bike paths and bike safety routes, which is great for $40,000 in our upcoming budget. But to analyze our most impacted intersections in traffic scenarios, I think that the humps come up next item, but it's really along Stockbridge, right? Because Stockbridge is kind of like this straight shot, and I think people are looking at trying to do speed bumps, or Fair Oaks, what kind of humps, but we can't do that because of the fire trucks, I think. Anyway, so instead of just doing it piecemeal, I mean, is there an overall approach that you could maybe recommend?
Actually, for the town of Atherton, relatively speaking, there's not a lot of traffic, and where you do have traffic, it's along Middlefield, it's on El Camino Real, and it's on Alameda. On El Camino Real, that's a state highway, that's out of our control, and that's something that Caltrans is responsible for. On Middlefield, a lot of studies have already been done, and over the years, traffic signals have been added. And there's probably one other spot within the town of Atherton where a future traffic signal would probably go in, but that's probably it, just from the spacing. I mean, when you put in traffic signals, you do not want to space them too closely, because one of the things, in addition to regulating traffic at that intersection, you also use them to provide timing and progression of traffic. So from that standpoint, there is kind of an optimum as far as how many and the spacing of signals. And again, within the town of Atherton along Middlefield, given there's already a signal at Marsh, you have a signal at Encinal. And going towards Menlo Park, there's probably in the future, they'll probably warranted another signal. So what I'm saying is that, basically Middlefield, what's probably going to happen in the future is you're going to add a signal. The one road
at the Linden Gates, is that what you're thinking?
No, actually, probably more. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's something we would, that as traffic increase, because it would also be a street that connects to El Camino, right? Because if it doesn't connect to El Camino, then that street's not going to get a lot of traffic, right? So I believe that, the traffic on Middlefield, I mean, I don't know that it's worthwhile looking at anything on Middlefield. Then the last street is Alameda. And really, through the town of Atherton, there is no controls other than the four-way stop at Atherton. And again, those intersections that have some sort of stop control, whether it's stop signs or traffic signals, that's where you have the backups, because that's where you're stopping traffic. So, the town can take a look at kind of more of a bigger picture, but, my sense, based on my experience, says that, really on Alameda, the intersection of Atherton is probably, again, because it's already a four-way stop-controlled intersection, is the intersection that, that you ought to focus on and take a look at, what other things you can do to improve that intersection.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would this be taking money away from some other program?
At this point, no. I mean, because again, within the CIP, we already created a traffic safety program, and that wasn't created specifically for the transportation committee, but any type of traffic safety issue that could come up during the year. So at this point, it wouldn't take away from another program, and.
Okay.
And
Well, at this point, we're starting the year off. It's day one.
All right.
If I could interject, it's day one. We've got 12 months to go, and every meeting we have $3,000 to $5,000 worth of putting signs up, putting laminated stuff on the ground for bike lanes, for keep clear, because one house doesn't want somebody driving down Heather Lane to turn around and come back. Because one resident came and made a complaint at the transportation. I'm not saying that this isn't the right thing, Mike. You've kind of convinced me that that's probably where we need to consider doing something. But to start off day one, the budget has just been approved, and we're spending more than half of what you allocated. That's my concern. So maybe there's a way to reduce the cost to do the study. Is there?
Well, and actually, all we're doing now, all this report is asking for direction, is do you want staff to move forward in the preparation of the RFP? And that's something that will be done. It's not going to be extra money. We'll take away some of the staff resources, but that's going to be done with staff time. And the estimated cost of that would be $2,500. Once we got the results of once we got proposals and then came up with recommendation, we would then come back to the council with a more specific cost of what that study would be to see, and at that point to ask the council if they wanted to move forward with actually doing the study.
Well, we have a lot of creeping acquisitions going on, and this would be another one. Similar to, we started out discussing quad gates, which I didn't see there was any money really in for that, which we keep talking about. But originally we said that the council approved that we would support quad gates to go to the Caltrain and say the council would like you to consider this and do it, and then Caltrain comes back and says no. So then the next thing is, well, would the council agree to, and it comes to the finance committee, would we agree to be putting $100,000 here, $100,000 there, and the number keeps going up. So it's what I would call a creeping acquisition. And so, for me, probably it's the timing, and it's the amount as a percentage of the total amount that you have in there. Not knowing what people are going to bring up, we still have issues on Middlefield that we've talked about, and Marsh. Okay, I know we talk about Middlefield a lot, but the big issue is the Marsh intersection, so it's Marsh Road. And I think that I think it's a lot of money to spend at this point in time. That's my 2 cents.
I'd like to make a motion
We
that...
haven't taken public comments,
Yes, we did.
did we?
Mm-hmm.
Did we?
I also was in the middle of talking, if you remember.
Oh, I apologize.
It's okay. Well, I'd also like to make a point that whenever we have questioned the people of the town, the number one concern in this town is traffic and transportation issues. And while I recognize and I respect your concern that it perhaps is an issue of timing, but this is a long-standing issue of people, and I respect. We always talk about respect our staff, and this is something that both Mike and Duncan have said we should be addressing, and I think part of that feasibility will be not just looking at this intersection as to whether or not you can put it in, but the impact on the surrounding area and what it would do. We're not going to be looking at this in a vacuum, and that would be part of the RFP and how it's designed. So I think it's time to do it. It's the way we do things in town when we don't have enough money to do everything. It's when we looked at the COF study years ago, when we looked at the drainage and the road study, and they came up with figures of 10 and $25 million for roads and drainage, and we gasped and started talking about bonds and other measures in order to finance it. And that looked, we threw our arms up and said it's impossible. And so we started doing it piecemeal. Piecemeal doesn't sound nice, but it's worked. And look at our roads today. You go into other jurisdictions, and there I don't know of another town that can compare with our roads. They have potholes and cracks, and our town has kept up with it. Drainage, we still have some issues, but I don't remember the last time they had to put those cones up in front of MA. I don't know the last time they've had major flooding on El Camino the way they used to have, or that I've gotten a call from the resident whose house is no longer inhabitable on El Camino. So I'm not saying that we've solved all of those issues, but I'm saying that it's an approach that has worked, and unfortunately it's an approach that, given the town doesn't have a commercial base, and that's probably a good thing too, but it's the way it is, and it's the way we have to utilize our resources.
What would it be? I was going to make a suggestion real quick.
Make a comment after you make a
Sure. Mike and council members, I don't see a problem with doing the study and potentially moving forward with the engineering review. As I mentioned, perhaps it's the timing. And would it be more appropriate for us to consider that this be a suspended item that would come back and see where we are in 6 months or 3 months and see how you're spending that $50,000, and then you could make a projection, and then perhaps those funds would be available for that, and perhaps we'll come into some additional funds based on how things are moving forward with the property taxes and things like that. We may have more money to spend at that time. I guess really my issue is the amount, and it's not even July 1st. So, Councilmember Carlson, sorry.
One of the things that there's high-speed rail has provided us is some new terminology, and one of the things that I just really latched onto is this so-called stranded investment idea of putting money in the Central Valley high-speed rail. But my question, Mike, could this end up being a stranded investment, this study of 15,000, or would it add to the town's knowledge base of possible solutions in the future?
Well, if I understand that term, it could be. I mean, it could be that the study can determine that it is feasible. It could cost, whatever the cost is going to be, and the town can decide that that's a lot of money, and there are other higher priorities. So so then, as a result of that, the council may decide not to move forward with the actual design and construction. So from that standpoint, it could.
So my comment is, I think what we're looking at right here, right now, today, is only authorizing staff to spend $2,500 for the preparation of the RFP, at which time that will come back to the council for decision to go forward with sending out, approving an RFP that could possibly cost $17,000 to $27,000. We're not approving the $17,000 to $27,000 expenditure right here, right now. So, Mayor Widmer, that would give us some time to see how revenue shakes out, and we're not authorizing the cost, the expenditure of the $17,000 to $27,000 right here, right now. It's only $2,500, and so I personally think we need to move on and move off of this. So if Council Member McKeithen doesn't mind, I'd like to make the motion to approve this, provide staff direction regarding preparation of a request for proposal for preliminary design services to determine the feasibility and cost to construct a roundabout. I would like to expand that and other traffic mitigation measures at the intersection of Atherton Avenue and Alameda de las Pulgas.
Not to exceed $2,500.
Not to exceed $2,500.
That includes the over-end portion that you always put in. Okay, so it's really $2,250.
It's not the 10% contingency.
There's always an extra 10%. I just want to point that out.
That's what you do the contract.
We have to start being very exact with our numbers. Okay?
All right.
There's no room. I'll support your motion.
I'm going to support the motion also with the idea, though, that kind of piggybacking on your idea, Mayor, that we really need to get kind of a preliminary plan as to allocation of the funds that are available in that safety category, and not find ourselves piecemealing it and wishing at the end of the year that we had waited and a higher priority comes up.
So we'll have a vote on it.
Is the motion 2,500 or 2,250?
No, it's 2,500, and Bill is saying there'll probably be a 10%.
There will not be a 10% add-on to it.
There will not be. Okay.
Okay, is what I'm saying.
Second.
It was seconded by
Right.
Councilmember.
All right, so that's all in favor?
Aye.
For the study. Okay, this one's going to be just as exciting.
Well,
Item number 26 is to develop a speed hump policy for the town of Atherton. And it's estimated cost of $7,000. Mike, you want to walk us through what would happen for $7,000?
Sure. And again, this came from the May 8th Transportation Committee meeting. First of all, I mean, unlike a roundabout as being a traffic control device, as we just talked about, speed humps, they're really the way I'm going to phrase is kind of a neighborhood livability, and it's designed to reduce vehicular speeds on residential streets. Currently, we don't have any here in Atherton, with the exception of at Camino al Lago, in front of Las Lomitas School. Several years ago, a speed hump was put in as part of a Safe Route to School grant. That is the only one that currently exists within town. What staff would recommend is that if the council were interested in exploring putting in speed humps throughout the town, that we really ought to start with developing a policy that defines the criteria, defines the process, and defines the type of materials that would be used, and also would lay out some of the costs. So that's the purpose of what we're asking for here. Our estimate of, again, this would be done by your town staff, would prepare a policy, and it wouldn't be a policy from scratch. There are a number of very good policies that exist, and so we would basically go through and do some literature research and pick out what we believe is the best of the best, and bring that back to the town. Our estimate of the staff time and the cost of that staff time to bring back a policy for your consideration is approximately $7,000.
But it's included in your departmental budget. Is
That's
that
correct. That's correct.
So really, there's no additional expenditure.
That's correct.
Are there other pressing problems that you have your staff working on currently that will have to be delayed?
No, because all the pressing problems they'll be handled, and if council directs us to do this, this is just another something else that goes onto the plate to get done.
Any other council comments?
Mike, why just speed humps? Why not traffic calming mitigation philosophy, hierarchy, or whatever you want to call it? Why are you focusing on speed humps as being the way to tackle the speed problem in town?
Well, again, this came from the Transportation Committee, And when you take a look at other types of traffic calming, what you see in other cities, you have traffic circles, which is basically kind of just a circle in the middle of the intersection. And the whole purpose is to slow cars down, because now instead of going straight through, they have to kind of slow down to go around the circle. Another thing that you see in communities is are what they're called different names, but something that I call a choker. And what that is basically a bulb out at intersections. And the purpose of that, again, all these things, the purpose is to slow down the speed of cars. And the reason why chokers are effective is that, people will drive at what they perceive a safe speed to be. And by narrowing the road, that's going to reduce their speed. The other nice thing about chokers is that it reduces that distance that you have to cross. So it's also a good thing for pedestrians, because it effectively reduces the street width and makes it a little bit more safe for pedestrians. Now, having said all that, the one very unique thing about the town of Atherton is your streets are very different than most streets. I mean, basically most of your streets, with the exception of just a handful, they're all residential streets. They're already narrow. They're already curvilinear, and these are the things that you try to do to slow cars down. So so really, when you take a look at the typical type of strategies that other communities have taken to slow cars down, the one that really does make the most sense here is the speed humps, because again, I don't believe your intersections of residential streets are big enough to accommodate a traffic circle. And then also, you don't have curb gutter and sidewalks in most places that would accommodate that bulb out. So really, speed humps from a strategy to reduce speeds in residential neighborhoods is probably would be the one, really the only one that would be effective here.
But would you be opposed to expanding the study to reevaluate the other alternatives? I understand that you put a bulb out or a chicane or whatever, like they did at one time on Holbrook Lane, which we've discussed here a number of times. Understand you don't want to have people driving on the public easement, which people have planted out on and things like that, but would that be possible to expand this and come
sure.
back with that? Because there are some streets that do have curbs, and there are some places where perhaps, other than a speed hump, would be appropriate. There were a number of years ago they put the lane demarkers out in the middle of the road too, and then after we put all that money into it, then they were all taken out because the residents didn't like the noise that people made when they drove on them. So speed humps similarly make noise, and it's possible that we would do this big policy and something else was probably more appropriate because it would keep things quieter. It's just a suggestion.
I agree with the mayor that we need to expand it. The study, if staff's going to look at this, they should look at other alternatives also and give us a full report and not just focus only on speed humps.
Staff can certainly do that. The cost estimate we provided in here, I'd have to come back with a different cost estimate because that would be a significantly larger effort than basically taking existing policies that currently exist and putting together a policy that we believe would be best, the best one for the town of Atherton. Well, since it's all
internal money that we've already given you the budget for your people, then why don't you consider doing that?
Sure.
Would that be something that we would want to say? Can you at least look at that and bring it to the next meeting?
So would we kind of give him a broad time frame within which to report back to us so that it's not, he doesn't make it, a topmost priority, if there's other things?
Yeah.
Is that something?
Well, yes. I mean, with this direction, what we would do is we would go and expand, to include other traffic calming strategies. We would want probably at least 3 months to report back to you, so we can have the opportunity to fit it in with other, work that's going on.
Okay. Was there an urgency? Somebody said get a report out in a month.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
So if the time expands a little bit for you to make sure you do an exhaustive study, and it's like a 3 to 6 month thing, that you'd come
Yes.
back sometime by mid-year or no later then, was that possible?
Yes.
3 months, 90 days is good, okay. Any other comments?
Motion?
Sure.
No, I'm fine. But rest assured, nothing should come back from transportation next month because we only meet quarterly.
Good, that's good.
Yes.
But we'll look forward to having the next round of acquisitions.
And meetings are even canceled on occasion, so you could be even more hopeful, Lieutenant.
All right, I think there was going to be a motion. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I think I put it here. So I'll make a motion to provide direction to staff regarding the expenditure of staff time and resources necessary to develop a traffic calming policy throughout the town, including speed humps.
Could I ask to rephrase that slightly?
Okay.
What I heard you say and what we will do is we will take what I think, rather than develop a policy, because developing policies really to do it right and thoughtfully, it takes time. Rather than spend a whole lot of time doing that, what I would recommend is for us to bring back a report to you with different traffic calming strategies that have been used, and with our recommendations on which, the pros and cons, and which are, appropriate here in the town. And we can also provide cost ranges for different types. Speed humps is going to be X amount of dollars. Chicanes is going to be much more expensive. But we can at least provide that type of information, bring that back to council, and then then get further direction on which ones you believe are most appropriate for the town, and from a cost standpoint appropriate. And then from that, we will go back and develop specific policy for your consideration.
And you'll be including the police department in the evaluations of those, is that
Absolutely, yes.
Could you also, would that also include under what circumstances certain things would be appropriate to be considered?
Yes, I mean, because that's correct. Because as examples, for speed humps, the reality here also is because, for instance, the fire department, they have design requirements, and they do not allow speed humps on any of the primary response routes. And so as part of that, there are specific criteria that we can outline of where it would be appropriate and inappropriate for the council.
Well, I agree. And I know that the speed humps specifically has been brought to the Transportation Committee by one of the committee members' wife, who did some study on different kinds of speed humps, and that's one of the reasons. And I think they live on Stockbridge, and it's a very direct, fast, a lot of speeders down that way. So I'll modify my motion to include to represent what you've recommended, that you are going to provide council with various alternatives of traffic and speed mitigation design alternatives in conjunction with the streets that would be affected. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was fair. That was fair. I think we understand what we're doing. And I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Motion passes. Moving on to item 27, Teresa, adoption of the resolution calling for the November 6th ballot.
Yes, you have my written report. The election is right around the corner. We have 2 members up for 2 council members whose terms expire this November. So this is the first step in calling the election and consolidating it with the county. I want to make one correction on the resolution. It's not the general municipal election, it's the presidential general election.
And it's to elect 2 and not 3.
2. Do I have 3 in the resolution?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You might want to expand,
I would like to.
Well, where do you see that? I see 2 in the resolution.
My resolution says 3 in the title. Am I wrong?
It says 2 in the whereas, but 3 in the title.
In the title. Got it. It's just in the title. Sorry.
Okay. Okay.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Public comment?
Was,
Oh, what was,
was
public
there a
comment,
second?
sorry.
No, there wasn't.
Thank you for that. Oh, seeing none?
Was there a second?
Yes, I see.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on. Item 28. Teresa, adoption of the resolution requiring the deposit from each of the candidates.
You have my written report. Historically, Atherton has always charged $400 for the statement. Typically, we'll reimburse if the cost is less than $400.
$1 per word. Okay. Any comments?
I've just got a question. You said sets the length of the statement at 200 words. Council can make a change to 400 words.
Yes, you can. It'll cost the
It'll
town.
cost more
Yes.
than 400 then?
Yes. Well, and it'll cost the town more as well for ballot materials.
And how much would that be?
I don't have that estimate.
It's always been 200?
It's always been 200. Yeah.
Less is more.
I think that's good.
It gets people out asking more questions of the candidates as well.
Any other council comments? Public comments? Back to council.
Move approval?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, 29, adoption of the appropriations limit. Deborah?
This is a continuation of your consent calendar. It's an annual appropriations limit required by the state constitution. It's a calculation we do every year. It's reviewed by the auditors, so it's basically part of the budget process every year.
Any questions from council? I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Who determined that we had 3.77% inflation?
The State Department of Finance sends out a memo every year. I can give you a copy of it, and it tells you what the rate of inflation for the state is. It also gives you the population estimates for the city and the county. We always select the largest. This year, the county is just less than 1%. We use that calculation, but it comes directly from the state.
Okay. It doesn't match what goes into the media that's released by the state, and so they can't give you one number and then another time speak and give you a different number. But okay, I understand where you got it. Thank you. Any public comments? Seeing none, bring it back to council. Can we have a motion or further discussion? Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on. Council reports. So I saw that we had an addition one this morning, or I just got it in my email. It's not in my book. So we got one from Councilmember Carlson and Vice Mayor Lewis.
Yeah, Councilmember Carlson's was passed out at the June 20th meeting.
Okay, sorry.
I'd like to request Council Person McKeithen a report on what's happening with the County Library Committee. We haven't gotten a report at all over the course of you being on the committee. I would appreciate some update from time to time as to what the committee is doing, particularly in lieu of the actions they took on the donor fund recently. If there's anything else pending that discussions going on and you could alert the council on, I would appreciate it.
I gave my donor fund report to Teresa for her manager's report. Other than that, we approved our budget. They've eliminated a number of positions. The county has been
Excuse me, limited number of positions. They're cutting back then?
They have the county, of course, they're county employees, and so they have instituted a tier system. They are following the advance of technology and promoting more e-books within the system. And that's basically what they've been doing in the system. The investments are in the two, the state and county fund. I question those from time to time as to whether or not they want to look outside.
Good.
That's basically what they've done. Deborah had attended the governing board meeting. The donor city issue had been raised for a
the town that I had raised on a monthly basis. How were we reviewing the
Good.
expenses? The council had approved the expenses, but I was concerned that the town was not carefully reviewing the actual expenditure of funds that had been approved by the council. And so I was going through the invoices at the time, questioning the expenditure of funds.
Good for you. I would urge you also to ask questions about what happens at the county level in terms of allocating costs for various programs. Gain as much knowledge about that as you possibly can as well.
I have asked
Good.
questions about their allocation.
Good.
And they're continuing, they had a somewhat of a budget deficit, and they had a 5-year program and a subcommittee that was looking into alleviating that full deficit and restoring the fund. And also their investment policy and their reserve policy. We've asked a lot of questions about that. But getting back to, I did question each of the warrants with regard to the expenditure of funds, because I knew at some point townspeople were going to ask, how was the library steering committee expending those funds that had been approved by council? And I was not happy. And Teresa can attest to that. Month after month, I came in and said, I'm not happy with the way the town is overseeing this expenditure of funds. And I reported that to Anne Marie Despain. I did not request the donor fund to be moved to the county. The reason it was removed to the county was because historically the county had asked the town to set up donor city trust accounts because the county did not want it appearing in the general fund of the county. They did not know how to do it at the time, many years ago. So they asked the town of Atherton to set up a separate trust fund account for that. At this point in time, they understood how to set up their own separate trust fund account. And so in order to have basically a check and balance on the funds, both at a county level as to what was being expended and at the town level, where the council would indeed, despite what the public has been saying, have to approve the expenditure of the funds and be given a report as to how specifically those funds were being expended through the warrants, then they would know through the county and through the town specifically how those funds were being expended in a dual capacity. That sounded good to me. And as I say, the question that I had heard that Deborah had raised was, would the town be getting a report? So I knew of this basically as I looked at the materials 2 days before the meeting. The other two donor city funds, who admittedly have far less donor city funds, the motion was made by another city, approved by another city, and was unanimous. The question I had, and my biggest concern, was whether or not the state could in any way attach those funds in the donor city account if it went and became part of the county. And today that remains my biggest concern. I was told by Pam Deal that no, they could not. Now, I asked her again, could they? No, they could not. If that remains an open question, then yes, it is a concern. And I've spoken with Bill Connors about it, and that is his one concern. It is equally mine if that is not true. But I did specifically ask the finance director of the JPA and was told that no, that could not happen. But you and I both know that the state has said a lot of things that it can't do and can change things. So that's something that continues to need to be explored, and I'm sure the other donor cities, if they have received similar assurances, would be equally concerned, and we will pursue it.
Well, thank you. That was very illuminating. I think a couple of things you said are troublesome from the standpoint that you said they were troublesome. One is the looking at the warrants, and then this open question about whether or not the funds at the county level are attachable or ironclad in that trust account. I'm wondering if this is something that maybe the finance committee, the audit and finance committee ought to agendize because it is part of the town's fiduciary responsibility and assets and so forth.
I believe they are.
Beg pardon?
I believe that they are already.
Oh, okay, good.
I've looked into that,
That's
and
good.
they are.
All right. Thank you very much. Could I ask one more favor here, Mayor? We did get a brief
email about the South Bay Waste Management meeting. Maybe we could get a little more detail on what happened at that meeting yesterday, since this is also a very important regional agency that, in my mind, has lacked sufficient oversight from the cities that are members of that agency.
Yeah, and before we get that, I was going to suggest in future agenda items that, Jerry, you and I meet again, reinitiate our meetings with Recology to really understand where we're going to be at the end of the year and their budget projections, because it is quite troublesome that, you know, they built a high overhead facility and then encourage people to cut waste, and then they cut their waste, and suddenly they say, oh, well, we've got all this overhead, so now you have to pay more.
Extra capacity,
Yeah, so anyway. But that, I think we should reestablish our meetings and then have them come down and speak. But you were at the meeting?
We met in closed session. There's claims against the executive director that he's...
All closed session then?
We met in open session as well.
Oh, okay.
That he's giving contracts to friends. So the board agreed to hire an independent private investigator. It's going to take about 60 to 90 days to find out whether the claims are true or not.
And who will the investigator be reporting to?
Gene Savari, who works for Aronson, Dickerson, Cone, and Landzone, and they actually represent the SBWMA.
How far back are they going to go? Because there were claims at the time of the award of this contract to Recology that there were gift contracts and punishments of taking away contracts for the actual sites that when Allied lost the contract, that they were punished by, they had some sites where they were doing landfill, and because they lost and because they were challenging some things that, from what I understand from a town resident who was in a similar business, that he had punished them by taking those contracts away and awarding them at higher cost to somebody else.
The board asked those same questions, and that's going to be included in the scope of work.
Okay, great.
Mr. Mayor, maybe while we're on the subject of regional agencies, one that I think we ought to get a report on sometime is a mosquito abatement, or whatever they call themselves now, agency that's been subjected to quite a bit of criticism. In fact, I think LAFCO has suggested it be merged in with some of their county agency, but I think we need to get an update on that for our residents.
Yes, I've actually drafted a letter that I want council to approve, recommending against dissolution. And I met with Sam Lerner yesterday, who's our resident we appointed to the West Bay Sanitary District, and he's, or I'm sorry.
Is he the chair?
Yeah.
Yes, he is, yeah. And he'd like to actually come to the council meeting this summer.
They typically do that once a year.
Yeah, it happens.
Buzz in.
They buzz in, and then they buzz right out.
I also wanted to mention with the SBWMA, they didn't approve the budget. They actually put that off for about 90 days until after the investigation is complete. We didn't approve any raises or merit increases, which is what they requested.
Well, that was one of the things that when I was talking with Jesus Nava, is it?
Yeah.
Nava? That they wanted to have some salary increases, and I just think that board is going to have to get backbone and to say, hey, wait a minute, your well-paid jobs and so forth, and if you don't like what you have, well, find somebody who can take the job for you. I think that I'm glad they're finally coming to a head.
So with regards to the budget, and I understand that you didn't approve the budget, but even in the discussions around the budget, and with the pending potential of having to assess even higher rates because suddenly the workload has fallen off, was there any consideration that perhaps they needed to and were obligated to actually perform to budget and would have to look at cuts, or did they just business as usual?
There were that wasn't discussed.
So did you go through a budget situation like we've done here, where you've gone through and on the board, you guys have reviewed the budget and asked some questions, or was it kind of, here it is, fait accompli?
Atherton's been spotty in their attendance, so I can't actually answer that. But at least we have 90 days before it actually gets approved, so
Okay.
I'll actually go through the budget over the summer. And
All
I'm
right.
going to ask that you and Jerry meet with me.
Okay, well, I think it's important because my reviewing of their board meetings notes, because I don't go to the meeting because they don't want electeds to come. It's more of a rubber stamp type of activity, and that's 100% on